Our Old Testament lesson today is from the book of Genesis, verses 1 through 10a. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring a little bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of choice flour, knead it and make cakes." Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant who hastened to prepare it. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he said, "There in the tent." And then one said, "I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." Each month, the local tourist information center called Visit Winston-Salem emails me the hospitality news. It is a list of upcoming events that people visiting or living in Winston-Salem might enjoy. July's list includes, for example, the Sawtooth School for Visual Arts Metal Clay Arts Symposium, the Winston-Salem Tennis Open, the Wake Forest versus Kennesaw State football game, the Carolina Wedding Show, and a conference of the North Carolina Gang Investigators Association. What this newsletter tells me, beyond the fact that there is a North Carolina Gang Investigators Association, is that these days hospitality means creating special events and inviting people to attend them, often for a fee. And if those who attend these hospitable events require food and a place to sleep, well, restaurants and hotels will be hospitable as well. Like some other biblical imperatives, such as care for the sick, hospitality these days is coupled with the word industry. Which is not to say that it's a bad thing to be able to buy a place to sleep or a meal to eat. We need those places. Traveling through today's world, you certainly can't depend on strangers taking you in. In the days of Abraham, though, hospitality was not an industry. It was an imperative, a requirement of a righteous life. My favorite definition of a righteous life is it's a life that meets the demands of relationships. Hospitality is one of those demands of relationships, even relationships that haven't begun yet, especially relationships that haven't begun yet, relationships with strangers who may become your guests. In today's story, relationship begins for Abraham by the oaks of Mamre. That little phrase alone suggests an opportunity for hospitality, a shady grove in the desert, a place of relief and refreshment. And Abraham's there, sitting at the entrance of his tent, just as you and I, before air conditioning, sat on the front porch. Maybe he's nodding a little in the heat of the day. How else could 3 travelers have drawn near without him seeing them? But when he looks up, he does see them, and relationship begins. The hospitality is on. That moment when Abraham opens his eyes and notices the men near him, that is step 1 of biblical hospitality. To be hospitable, you have to notice that someone requires your hospitality. Step 1 is seeing, noticing the strangers nearby. Step 2, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them. Step 2 is, having seen, going out to meet. Abraham doesn't remain in his place at his tent. He moves toward the strangers that he has seen. Now, since he's moving toward strangers, there's some danger in this step. Are the strangers allies, or will they be a threat? Considering the possible danger, a lesser man might go toward them puffed up with the power of his position. If these strangers have a need, they are dependent on him. But instead, Abraham moves to the third step of biblical hospitality. He humbles himself. Reaching the strangers, he bows down to the ground. And then, having put himself in the role of a servant, he moves to step 4, the invitation, rest here and let me feed you. His invitation accepted, Abraham moves to step 5, providing. For this, he enlists the cooperation of his household. Sarah will prepare bread. The servant will slaughter a calf and prepare the meat. Then Abraham gathers what has been prepared and sets it before the guests. And then he takes his place a little distance away and simply stands by. He may or may not be needed. He's waiting to find out. Though he may hear the murmur of the strangers' voices, he's not eavesdropping, that would be impolite. But he is listening for a need, listening for their invitation for him to be of help, listening for a message or a call. And this is step 6 of hospitality. After providing, waiting, being present, ready to serve, standing by, listening for a call. The lectionary pairs this Old Testament story with a New Testament story about a woman named Martha who welcomes Jesus into her home. You just heard Keith read that story a moment ago. Like Abraham, Martha works hard to prepare for her guests and provide. But unlike Abraham, she doesn't have the cooperation of her household. We're told that Martha is distracted by her many tasks, and anyone who's ever hosted guests for dinner, which presumably is all of us, can imagine how hard she's working. All of us therefore understand why it irritates Martha that her sister Mary is not working with her. She's just sitting by Jesus' feet listening. And Martha gets so mad that she complains to Jesus, even accuses Jesus of not caring about her, and tells Jesus to tell Mary to help. Putting these stories of Abraham and Martha side by side, I see something I haven't noticed before. Martha seems to have dived so fast and deep into step 5, providing, that she missed step 3, humbling herself. She may think of herself as a humble servant, but when she tells Jesus what to tell Mary, she's not being humble. She's being in charge. Most of us in this room are probably used to being in charge of something, whether it's a job or a household or perhaps a volunteer setting. In charge is a hard identity to set aside. It's a responsibility, and we take it seriously, just like Martha did, just like Abraham did. It's not wrong to be in charge when you are called on to be in charge. Being in charge is hard work, and it can be a little frantic, as we learn from Martha's distress as well as from Abraham's story. The description of Abraham providing includes a lot of words that amount to hurry up. Abraham hastens into the tent and tells Sarah to quickly make cakes. He runs to the herd to select a calf, and the servant hastens to prepare it. Hours of work are narrated as though it's a speeded up cell phone video. It happens in seconds, probably to the accompaniment of some zany music. But after setting the food before the guests, Abraham retreats. Let the strangers decide how and what to eat. Let the strangers steer the conversation. Let the strangers determine whether there's anything else they need, in which case Abraham will provide it. Meanwhile, he's simply standing by, humbly sharing the shade under the tree. Sometimes the best thing a host can do is just humbly wait to see if he's needed. Abraham has a little Martha in him, and he has a little Mary. When the situation requires him to be in charge, he works hard at it. And when the situation requires him to stand by, he stands by. Humbly, quietly. I picture him as a non-anxious presence. He's there if needed. Otherwise, he's just enjoying the shade with everyone else. Not inserting himself into the conversation, but listening for a call. And a call of sorts will come. One of the men will make the very surprising announcement that Sarah will give birth to a son. This is important news. This news will change history. But when Abraham hears the news, all he knows is that it will change his life. And all he did was stand by and listen for the call. And that's what makes him a little like Mary. After he directed his whole household in all that work, was it hard for Abraham to just stand by in case he was needed? I think that standing by can be hard for people who are used to being in charge. We might feel like we failed unless we're active, doing something we think is helpful even if it hasn't been asked for. But taking charge in spaces that are not ours to be in charge of, spaces in which we may be invited guests, is not hospitable or righteous. It is presumptuous and it is proud. And it probably happens most often in the spaces where we need to be most humble. The opportunities to build relationships with those who are not like us. Today, Martha's blunder reminds me uncomfortably of times that I have tried to be in charge of spaces that were not mine to be in charge of. In every one of those times, and I can count them on my fingers, I was invited as a guest specifically to interact with people of different race, faith, culture, or background. And in every instance, I was working hard to be, as I thought, helpful, giving answers, trying to manage the conversation, making suggestions about how the program should go. In every case, I was reminded very clearly that I was not in charge, and I needed to hear that. Over recent years, discussions of race and culture and diversity in our country have been challenging, but I also find them exciting. Painful as the process is, I feel like I'm unlearning a lot of what I thought I knew. Sometimes I think I know history, and I'm wrong. Sometimes I think I know what's helpful, and I'm wrong. Sometimes I think I'm supposed to be in charge, rush in with my ideas of how to be helpful in someone else's space. Again, wrong. As I unlearn some things, I learn others. Reading about Abraham this week, I'm thinking about how I need to learn the steps of biblical hospitality. Step 1, seeing, noticing the strangers nearby. Step 2, moving toward them, but step 3, with humility. The humility to admit that I may not know this stranger's need. All I can do is offer an invitation. If my invitation is accepted, I can do the work appropriate to meet the demands of this new relationship. And after the work is done, the next step is to stand by, like Abraham under the tree, and listen like Mary at Jesus' feet. Listen in case there's a call. I like to think of the church as an oasis, a place of relief and refreshment in a very big and very hot desert. Sitting at the entrance of this our tent, what strangers will we notice crossing the desert? Home Church has always worked hard at hospitality. It is a responsibility that we take seriously. And let us also take that responsibility with humility, understanding when to take charge and when to stand by, stand beside Standing quietly beside, we might just enjoy sharing time in the shade with people who may become friends. Or we might hear a call that will change our lives. And that, family of Christ, is today's hospitality news. Amen.